Welcome back, Nerd Squad. As you may have heard recently, Disney Plus is slated to have a slew of new Marvel shows joining the MCU soon, including a show for the character Moon Knight. For those unfamiliar with this character, allow us to give you an introduction. Moon Knight, also known as Mark Spector, was introduced in the comics in 1975 in Werewolf by Night issue 32. The character himself has often been likened to Batman in the sense that both have cover identities for their vigilante justice personas, going by millionaire playboys during the day and fighting crime in costume at night. His costume even somewhat resembles Batman. But today we are going to be looking less at this comparison and instead looking more into what makes Moon Knight such a dark character in the MCU. Get to know him a bit more by uncovering some of the scary facts surrounding him. Join me in counting down the top 10 scary Moon Knight facts that you need to know, and feel free to let us know how scary of a character you think Moon Knight actually is. Let's get counting. Number 10. He died. He got his powers while working as a mercenary for hire for a man named Raoul Bushman, who was looking for an Egyptian tomb. Bushman was a ruthless sort, enjoying the violence he brought to others and killing people to try and find what he wanted. Mark did not enjoy this side of Bushman and punched Bushman after he killed the archaeologist on the expedition, Peter Alroun, in an attempt to protect Peter's daughter, Marlene. During this fight, Bushman ended up getting the upper hand and left him for dead. Fortunately, he was able to make his way back to the tomb before he went unconscious. Marlene and the rest of the exploration team carried his body into the tomb and laid him out below an idol belonging to an Egyptian god, Khonshu. Mark had a vision involving Khonshu, who promised him life in exchange for his loyalty to the god and commitment to do Khonshu's bidding. Mark accepted. Later, Spector would ponder that he had simply been having near-death hallucinations. Ooh, spooky. Number 9. Military service. Before he was Moon Knight, Mark Spector served in the military as a Marine, and even went to Iraq. While you might not think this is scary, war is actually terrifying. To add to this intensity of his service, he also began having episodes while on tour. Mark actually suffers from dissociative personality disorder, but we'll touch more on that later. He at one point is shown in the comics coming to after seeming to have wandered outside of the military camp, following a voice that called to him in the dark under the full moon. Not only is this in and of itself terrifying, as it could have compromised his fellow soldiers' safety, but concern is expressed by those who leave the camp to find him when they tell him he has actually walked into a minefield. Boom. Number 8. Ol' Uncle Nazi. Yitz Perlman was a close family friend and rabbi who had fled Germany with Spector's family. Oh yeah, Mark is also Jewish. But it is later revealed in a flashback in the comics that Yitz Perlman, who has been a family friend of the Spector since Elias, Mark's father, was just a kid, is actually not who he appears to be. Mark ends up in an area of the synagogue he is not meant to be in and falls down through a trap door leading into the basement. Further into the basement. He was meant to meet Yitz, who he fondly refers to as Uncle Yitz later in the evening. Yitz is also down in this basement in the dark, and upon Mark stumbling in, decides to reveal his true identity. He lights a match to reveal a bloody corpse hanging from the ceiling and offers Mark the prompt: a rabbi, a Nazi, and a serial killer walk into a bar. Yitz Perlman was actually the adopted identity that allowed Ernst, the man's real name, to escape Germany as Hitler's reign was coming to an end, and avoid prosecution as a Nazi. And as he suggests, he is also a serial killer. This revelation would scar Mark for the rest of his life, and leads into our next scary fact. Number 7. Multiple personalities. The traumatic revelation of finding out that his Uncle Yitz was actually a Nazi and serial killer ended up traumatizing Mark to the point that he developed a dissociative personality disorder, which, I mean, is fair. If I found out that my uncle was a Nazi and a serial killer, I probably would want to take a break from being myself too. For those who don't know, dissociative personality disorder, also sometimes referred to as dissociative identity disorder or multiple personality disorder, is a condition where the afflicted alternates between at least 2 different personality states. The condition is also usually accompanied by blackouts and gaps in one's memory, meaning you can adopt another personality and go about your life in that separate identity or state, and then potentially forget what you were doing or have done. Pretty spooky stuff. And Mark doesn't just have 2 alternate personalities, no, he is a revolving door of 10 personalities, including Jake Lockley, cab driver, and Stephen Grant, millionaire. The fact that he is also capable of transitioning between them so quickly also makes it hard for him to settle down in life. Number 6. he has a kid. While admittedly having children isn't very scary, having a child while also suffering severely from dissociative identity disorder can be. I also think the premise of having a child and being fully responsible for a life is objectively terrifying, but that's just me. Remember Marlene from the Egyptian expedition gone wrong that strengthened his bond to Khonshu? Her and Mark have an on and off again romance in the comics, kind of to be expected considering their shared trauma. While the two have never quite been able to make it stick due to the fact that Mark's crime-fighting persona Moon Knight means putting Marlene constantly in danger, and the fact that he is constantly jumping from one of his personalities to the next, there is a time when they actually managed to settle down for a while. During this time the two conceived a child and Marlene gave birth to a daughter who is named Diatrice in the comics. Diatrice Alron, she took her mother's last name. The really odd and scary thing is that she's not really fully Mark's daughter. At the time that they settled down, Mark was living as his personality Jake Lockley, and it was because he settled into this personality for such a lengthy period that he and Marlene were even able to make their relationship work. So is Diatrice really even Mark's daughter? I don't know. Sounds like she's more Jake's daughter, I guess. Number 5. Khonshu. You might not think the Egyptian god of the moon Khonshu is a particularly frightening figure, especially since Khonshu is the one granting Mark his powers, but is he? Later in the comics it is revealed that Khonshu seeks to drive Mark insane so that he can use his body as a vessel to enter the realm of the living. While this ends up being untrue, what is implied instead is even more terrifying. It is implied that Khonshu is simply an illusion that was created to help cure Mark. Ultimately, he recognizes that in order to gain control of himself and his personalities, he must accept them. In doing so, he gains control again and regains his sanity. One of those, ooh, it was all a dream type scenarios. Number 4. Morpheus. No, not that Morpheus. We are instead talking about one of Moon Knight's villains, Robert Markham. To really understand the darker side of this character, it's good to get into the mind of those he fights and also the way Mark grapples with his demons. Not just his internal demons either. Robert Markham was suffering from a rare viral disease and sought help. From there he became a patient of Peter Alrune Jr., brother of Marlene Alrune and son of the original Peter Alrune. Sorry if I'm saying this last name really wrong. My apologies. The experimental drug that Peter Jr. prescribes leads to Robert being unable to sleep and developing psionic abilities. Oh, and he also becomes a boogeyman monster looking type with like claw hands. It's creepy. He ends up being thwarted by Moon Knight the first time but returns to his villainous ways after mutating even further, allowing himself to link his mind with Peter Jr.'s and use it to project nightmares into other people's minds. Hence his name Morpheus, which is actually adopted from Greek mythology where Morpheus is known as the god of dreams. Not from the Matrix, unfortunately, in case you thought that was where I was going. But oddly enough, the same source that the writers for the Matrix probably were inspired by for their character of the same name. Number 3. Addiction. Like most heroes, he has also suffered from an addiction. His is one that is actually also a huge global issue in the real world currently, an addiction to painkillers. This happened as a result of a battle between him and Bushman that left him crippled with 2 broken knees. Obviously needing the medication while healing, he ended up developing an addiction to them. Like Mark doesn't have enough issues to worry about. He sees things, has illusions, was friends with a Nazi, and wrestles with multiple personalities, and fights crime on top of that. And then he also has to wrestle with an addiction? Oh, talk about a rough go. Number 2. His brother is a serial killer. Everywhere you look with Moon Knight there are just serial killers everywhere, and you definitely don't have to look far for this one. Randall Spector is Mark Spector's brother, who after betraying him by killing his girlfriend and getting blown up by Mark with a grenade, became a serial killer of nurses. Oddly specific. He currently goes by the name Shadow Knight, and his costume and look is also quite terrifying as well. Definitely not someone you'd want to meet in a dark alley. He is part of the cult of Khonshu and was granted superhuman strength and durability by Princess Nephthys, who was also once his lover. Number 1. Brutality. Bushman has obviously been one of Mark's greatest foes throughout the comics, and as a result of such, their fights have been legendary. These fights have also gone to show just how different Mark Spector really is from DC's Batman. Batman can be brutal too, sure, but there's Batman level brutal, and then there's Moon Knight's level of brutal. For an example of just how violent Moon Knight can be, and as an example of how he really sees himself as the one doling out justice, I point you to Moon Knight Volume 5, Issue 2. This is also the fight where Moon Knight shatters both his knees, but even while down he keeps on fighting, and gruesomely too. He manages to cut off Bushman's face using the blade on his crescent moon dart. I don't think I've ever seen Batman quite do that. Thanks so much for watching, Nerd Squad. Hopefully you found some of these Moon Knight facts scary. To be honest, Moon Knight's entire story could be spun as a horror story of sorts. So macabre. I really hope they manage to keep all the grim, almost Spawn-like darkness of his narrative intact in the Disney Plus series, but Who knows? What are you most looking forward to when it comes to his series? Are there things you would like the MCU to change about him or keep? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this list and want to see more videos exploring Moon Knight, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, as well as subscribe and turn on that bell notification so you don't miss it if it drops. Till next time, this is Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you to get spooky and stay nerdy, YouTube.